Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Mandy, and this is Love Sober,
the podcast for the sober and sober curious.
Hi there, and welcome back to Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious. So today we are really excited to welcome Laura from Club Soda. Normally we start by checking in with each other, but we're just going to start by checking in with Laura this morning. So just to tell you, if you don't know, I'm sure you do, Club Soda is a British mindful drinking movement. It has 30,000 individual members and 5,000 pubs included and 200 drinks bans, which is 700 drinks, all within the movement trying to, I guess it's to try and make space for sober people within the drinking world. I guess that's the first mission, isn't it?
Yeah, we
hi, Laura.
Hi. I think we call our mission creating a world where nobody has to feel out of place if they're not drinking.
Yeah, so that's wicked. So how are you doing, Laura?
I'm good.
Yeah. You're in London? Is it snowing? What's going on?
It's not snowing. It's very cold, and we've already been to one event this morning before breakfast, so feeling very virtuous.
Well, and who says then that when you stop drinking, your social life is over? It's like you went to an event before breakfast. How hardcore is that?
Admittedly, it wasn't the most exciting event, but you know, I got some good networking done before 9 a.m. and I feel like that's somehow winning at life.
I think so, and you wouldn't be doing that with a hangover.
Definitely not. When I used to have early morning meetings like this, I barely got out of bed in time to get to them, and then I must have stunk when I was at the events. And now I'm annoyingly bouncy, and everyone was annoyed by me this morning.
Excellent. I mean, one of the things we wanted to speak to you about, actually, because, you know, obviously you're a kind of a big public figure, and you're sort of in these events, and there's a big community. But I'd really like to hear about sort of what brought you to the decision to stop drinking.
So my background's in politics, so I have always been a community campaigner since the age of about 14, and I got elected to the local council in London when I was 23. So I spent all of my adult life spending my evenings in meetings. How exciting! And very much fueled by lots of drinks in the pubs afterwards, and, you know, political campaigning that involved going out for drinks. And, you know, I didn't need much of an excuse. I've always been a bit of a drinker. I'm my father's daughter. As I say to people, I inherited two things from my dad: his boobs and his drinking habits. So I am definitely a chip off the old block. And so I always drank quite a lot. Like most of us, actually at university, my drinking was nowhere near as bad as it was as I got a bit older and had a bit more disposable cash. It was really easy for me to go out in the evenings. I don't have children and those sort of things. So to go out, get the tube home, pick up some, the off licence was open until 2 a.m. on the way back from the tube. It's really easy to pick up more drink on the way home. But what was really a tipping point for me was that I ended up in a job that I really wasn't enjoying. It's a job where, and this may sound lovely to some people, nobody cared if I turned up. And for me, that was very soul destroying. I'm an activator by nature. I want to do things. I want to get things done. And it slowly chipped away at my self-esteem and my energy. And it meant I could also go out at lunchtime and have a boozy lunch with people that I knew were available and all that sort of stuff. And I was boring myself, really. You know, I was stuck in a job I wasn't enjoying. I ended up there far longer than it was only meant to be temporary. I ended up there far longer than I thought. You would think I could do amazing stuff with all the time that job gave me to do something else. But when something drains your energy, like a job that you're not enjoying, it is actually impossible to use any spare time you have or given to do anything more energetic, because you're just continually being drained and you're not being given energy. And I kept saying to myself, I need to sober up so I can get another job. And this is the thing that we always think when we're changing drinking, which is that somehow we need to fix this one thing to make the other thing happen. But actually, the reality is I needed to get a new job in order to stop drinking. So I managed to engineer a secondment for myself, which got me out of that space long enough for me to go, right, I've got an opportunity. And I did a secondment in the arts world, which I'm very passionate about, theatre. And I was suddenly thrown into the middle of the art scene in London with people that I highly respected, and realised that I was still turning up with a hangover. And I've got this opportunity suddenly in a space that I really cared about. Why the fuck am I still drinking? And so I made a very quick decision that that's it. That's enough. I need to stop this now. And within a month of being in that secondment, I stopped drinking. And so things don't always have to happen the way around that we think. We don't have to stop drinking to make everything else wonderful happen. Sometimes we need to make a step in another direction in order to have the confidence and the energy to give up drinking. So that was really important for me, that secondment that got me out of a space into somewhere where I began to care about myself again.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like the self-worth was very key there, and it needed just something to kick in that elevated you to just thinking, actually, something's worth it. It's quite interesting, isn't it? That sort of, what comes first there.
Yeah, I've always been very defined by the job that I do. When you're not proud to tell people what it is that you do for a job, then that was a real difficult thing for me. And I kept feeling, it really damaged my self-identity. Yeah.
You know what we've sort of, I'm thinking about a lot lately, and in terms of what we kind of talk about at Love Sober is working with people's values and individuals, because and we will say sort of that for a long time, there was these paradigms around drinking. It was black and white, and there was this one model, the kind of AA type model. And the more I see it, the more voices you hear and the individual stories you hear, I think it's really important. Well, we've both spoken about this, haven't we, to work with your values and what's important to you, which sounds what you're saying.
It's actually one of my favourite blogs that I've ever written is about how quitting drinking reconnected me with my values.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's a picture of me and Charles Kennedy. And I wrote that after Charles died, of alcoholism. And so it really, really touched me. I feel like I'm the person I was when I moved to London when I was 22 again. I always felt I was a people person and was always very connected to people's issues so that I could go and solve the problems. I'm an activator. So I see a problem, I want to fix it. And in the last few years before I gave up drinking, I began to think maybe I'm not a people person, because quite frankly, I couldn't hold my attention in a conversation. I was either too hungover and too tired to hold that attention. Or I was too busy thinking about the next drink and thinking, tomorrow I will think about that thing that makes me upset and angry, and tomorrow I have the energy to do that. And then of course I would start drinking again, and so on. When I gave up, I always talk about giving up as like 1,000 little epiphanies. It's not always the things that you think that might happen that are the things that are the most important. It's not whether you suddenly lose 2 stone or any of those things. For me, it was those micro connections you have every day with people on the tube or at the till in the supermarket. I was always grumpy during those because everything was such hard work with a hangover. But suddenly getting somebody's eye on the tube and having a joke or having a nice interaction with somebody at the checkout began to give me so much energy, because that's where I get my energy from. And it was those things that came really quickly after giving up drinking that really made me excited. I am a people person. It was just hidden behind the fog of a hangover.
Do you know, I love what you say, because I think there's this whole thing, and I can see this in Club Soda with all these connections, that people do think that the social life and socialising is going to be different and or ending. And we are very, very social beings. We need those. So that's a big fear, isn't it? That's a massive, massive fear. But like you're saying, if you actually stop, what happens is micro connections is like, you automatically connect more with your world and with other people. So it's not, it's one of those lies that we're told kind of through advertising, you know, when you see us this, you can't connect without me or something.
Yeah, and we define socialising as something very specific. Now, the truth is that most of us drink at home. We don't go out and socialise at all. It's this great myth we have in our head. We might go out twice a month, but that's still enough for us to go, well, I don't want to ruin my social life. So it becomes one of those myths that becomes a barrier to stopping you drinking. When actually, and then we can only see social life as through the narrow prism of going out, going to the pub, having some drinks, and not recognising that there's far more out there. And I fully appreciate that I'm in a much more privileged position in the fact that I don't have children and family that I'm tied to. And I live in a city where, you know, there's so much going on that alcohol doesn't have to be the first thing in a place that you walk into. But there is something everywhere. I once spent a little bit of time on a website for a very small town in the middle of America for one of our members who's going, oh, I don't know where to find friends that aren't in the pub. And I went, right. There's yoga in your library, there's a reading group, and, you know, you can go to those things. You can do that. You're automatically saying that because it's easier to say that than to recognise that actually you need to put some effort in to finding the things that are going to help you reach your goal. You are not going to reach this goal without putting in some legwork, but by putting in the legwork, you will open up a whole world to yourself.
Yeah, and I think that whole reframing what social life is, I mean, that comes up all the time, doesn't it? And it's like, well, actually, you do get that social box ticked by going out for brunch with people, or, you know, and like you said, I really like that, like looking in people's faces, and if you're queuing up at the queue, have a chat. It's amazing how that stimulates those parts of the brain, which I don't know what they are. It's the mirror neurons, isn't it? That then,
bits of the brain. Let's call it bits of the brain. But the other thing to say is our social life does change and evolve. We don't still socialise the way we did when we were 21, and we probably didn't do the same social things last year as we did this year, even when we were drinking. We have a constantly evolving social life. New people are coming into our lives all the time. They bring their interests with them, and we go along with them because generally we do things with other people. That's the whole point of friendship. So we're also trying to cling on to something, an idea of a reality that is actually forever changing anyway. So it's not that your social life disappears, it changes, and it changes in many different ways. You may go home earlier, you may still go to parties, but you may go home earlier. You may find that you really enjoy watching an episode of a box set when you get home, and that gives you more excitement than staying at a party another hour.
Well, The Walking Dead would give me more excitement than staying at a party another hour at the moment.
Sorry, I know I've got a bit quiet, but I just had a bit of an emotional kind of inspirational kind of feeling listening to all that, because I really kind of I get so much of that kind of. I mean, I consider myself very political, and I always was when I was a kid, and. We often sort of say when I negotiate things these days, like Kate will send me a message and Mandy's, you know, politician Mandy. And, you know, that was something in me, that kind of activism. And I lost that for so many years. And just to hear you say that and to, you know, I really, really feel that's come back to me. And I feel so grateful that I can, you know, sort of in my own way make a difference, or just actually feel something again.
And it was a really important for me. So when I was on the council, I was part of a group of politicians that tried to sell in the idea of the Olympics into all the councils further away from basically East London, to say this is worth doing, this is worth having the precept on the council tax for. And I went to council meetings around London and spoke to councils of all political persuasions to encourage them. I really wanted to volunteer on the Olympics, and I got a volunteering slot.
Like my dad.
I had to fight a little bit for that still, even though I'd been involved in parts of the Olympic delivery. But at 3 months sober, I went and volunteered at the Olympic Stadium. And I cannot tell you how amazing it was, because at that 3 month point, my energy had begun to come back. Until then, I'd been doing a lot of dozing and a lot of drinking water because that's what my body asked for. But I turned up at that stadium at 6 a.m, and nobody else would have been able to see that. I was going, I'm up at 6 a.m. I'm in the Olympic Stadium. I'm just driving the Williams sisters.
Oh no,
around the Olympic Park. I felt like I was an athlete.
I was going to say that's like an Olympian.
Yeah, and so they thought they were the champions, but I was the champion. I can tell you. Yeah. And for me, it was, why would I do anything to have missed this when I was so passionate about it? I've been in Trafalgar Square when the Olympics were announced. That's keeping to your values. That's seeing something through to the end. That's living the things that you want to do that are important to you. Is really an extra hour, 2 hours in a pub, drinking more and more wine really the most important thing? No, it isn't. Being able to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do this was the most important thing.
And I think what you were saying about how kind of, naturally we evolve as we get older, I think there's kind of two things there. There's one thing that I definitely kind of got stuck in some kid-outhood kind of moment where I lost myself and became a mother. But, all I'd ever known was kind of going out and partying, going to festivals, etc. So I knew identity. I had no kind of help building, and I didn't know how my social life was going to look like and what I was supposed to do. And everyone was still drinking and, getting wasted. So, and now there is so much I learn about having fun from having kids. Do you know what I mean? It's like they don't need anything to, like my son, he jumps out of bed every morning. My daughter, she's like nearly a teenager, so it's slightly more difficult in the morning. But he's still got that kind of like, I'm up, hello, mummy, kind of thing, like jumps in my bed. And it's like, bloody hell, you don't need coffee. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, don't ever start drinking coffee because then your brain is going to need that to wake you up. Whereas you just do it all by yourself. And just the fun that they can have is very grounding. I feel really privileged as a sober mum to be like, yeah. You know what's going on.
I think, because you were saying that what works for you, Laura, that I think wherever you are, you can find ways to make it work, can't you? So you're like, okay, well, I can access all of this. This is really important to me. With a bit of legwork, I can reframe this. I can get myself to this. I can get myself up in the morning. For us mums, like I was stuck in for years, and I think that's when my drinking took a downward spiral. But like you say, Mans, I can now look at my kids. They're a great excuse as well. When in the early days, when people say, "Oh, why are you drinking?" You're like, "Oh, I can't do kids and hangovers," So it's like, well, you could use those bits, couldn't you? And look at your kids for inspiration and all those family activities. So build that in. It's like use whatever you've got,
And I love going to children's theatre, and I go without children. I'm the weirdo. Me and Ali went to Zeusical the musical before Christmas. It was
amazing.
Us and 200 children, and we were like, we're here for us. That's how that's happening.
That's brilliant.
So don't ever think those things aren't for you, because they are great. They're fun. We didn't have to intellectually engage with any other story apart from the songs. It's great.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. Anything to switch the mind off as well, I think. What was I going to say? Yeah, so what did you do it on your own, do you think? Did you stop drinking on your own, or did you go to support?
So I will tell you the story because I think the story is really important because I accidentally did lots of really good behaviour change things. And so for anyone who may have got there through other routes than joining a community, it's worth really taking a step back and looking at what you did. So I decided something had to change and that it couldn't wait. And I wasn't far off from my birthday, actually. And a birthday would be a normal, well, I'll give up after my birthday. But I was like, this cannot wait. And so I booked a day on a course, a one-day course, 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time. And I'll tell you a bit more about that course in a bit. But what I had done was I had put a date in the diary. I'd put aside a whole day to think about it. I hadn't just gone, oh, I'll read a book and then start the first chapter and give up, which is what I always did. I had decided to do a course because I never got through to the end of any of the books. And my learning style is such that I really need to be in a room and talking with people. And so I'd picked a day and I'd paid for that course. And never underestimate how important putting money into your recovery can be, actually, because you've got some skin in the game. You've made an investment. It doesn't matter if it's a £9.99 book or something else. The fact that you've invested something in change is really important. And then the day I booked it, I went and told some of my best friends that I had booked it. So I gave myself some accountability, and I saw the very happy looks on their faces, which tells you everything. I told them this at a party, so obviously I then proceeded to get pissed. I then proceeded to maybe cop off with someone who my friend was trying to cop off with because they were a big drinker too. But this is the most amazing part of the story, right? Which is that after we'd got wine on the way home and drunk some more, she said to me, "You're a functioning alcoholic." And I said, "Why did you say that?" Because those are words I didn't want to hear. And she went, "Oh, because I am too, and you drink like me. You were filling up your glass of wine before it had even finished." And that's exactly what I was doing. And this is why we are here together still drinking wine. And I said, "It's funny you should say that. I've just booked a course." And they went, "Oh, I did that course in January." Obviously, that didn't do very well for them. Yeah. What I did is I started a relationship with this person. And what a new relationship does is automatically change your environment. It gives you something interesting and exciting and new to look forward to. And I spent a lot of time at her house. So I spent some time in a very new environment where I completely threw my routine up in the air. So she gave up with me. We spent a lot of time together, and we got excited about herbal teas and brought a soda stream and tried out new drinks and stuff like that. And that was really, really important for me. More important for me, and this is the discussion I have with her all the time, is she fell off the wagon lots. And it was hideous. And I just looked at those and thought, I do not want this to be me. And so she did that hard bit of work for me, to be honest, that falling off the wagon. I also I was happy to tell people I'd given up. And so I'd go to the pub and it was absolutely fine. And I would get out, a pint of tea and it would all be fine. So I was quite in people's faces about it. And if people ever asked me, why are you not drinking? I'd say, I was so good at it. It's time for everyone else to have a chance. And that sort of stuff. So, that ballsy activist nature in me just went in and saw this as a wonderful rebellious act. So in all of that, but in doing that, I was confident in what I told people. I wasn't taking any crap. I was saying, I'm not drinking. This is why. Now let's move on. And the more confidence you say that with, the more that people just back off and don't challenge it. So all in all, I created the right environment for me to do it at the time. My commitment was high and my confidence was high. And I'll touch back on the one-day course I did. The one-day course made me furious. I was so angry. In the room, it was great because I met other people and I didn't feel I was on my own and I had put the time aside. But ultimately, the course was unethical. There were people who were dependent drinkers in the room and the course didn't offer any support afterwards. And I just came away thinking, this should not be allowed to happen. I'm not going to drink, but why is this happening? And so that's sort of where I started the idea for Club Soda, which is for many of us, we start these ideas in that sobriety. But so the course worked for me because it made me angry rather than gave me the tools. And I was going to show them that I could do this. And so I began to touch on the subject of sobriety intellectually as well, around what was available and what wasn't available, what the services were and stuff like that. And in so doing, I was immersing myself in the topic. So you can see how all of those things happen. So my knowledge grew, my confidence about what I knew about drinking grew, about what behaviour change meant. I started exploring all the behaviour change stuff. And I put in place the right information for me to keep sober.
So I guess the question was what your tips for someone starting out would be. So I guess that's that, isn't it? So it's immersing yourself in knowledge.
So my tips are is that however much I used to buy self-help books and skip over those pages that had all those exercises in, because I get the gist. Do the exercises, do the planning, think about it, think about how you are going to create a new life, and recognize that just because you might try one thing out that may not work, you might need to try something else out. But the more you plan, the more you learn, the more knowledge you have, the more confident you become. The more confident you become, the more likely you are to be able to change your drinking habits. That's called self-efficacy. That's where you build your knowledge to a point where you are confident about the journey you're taking and how you're going to do it. And you do that by just feeding yourself information and planning how you use that information.
I love that. I really love that. And I think that that kind of describes in a very articulate way what I often think, we talk about this sort of upward spiral that I saw almost strangely, weirdly, inevitably happening once I started meeting my goals and going, I'm not going to drink. Oh, I didn't drink, so I go up a bit. Therefore, I can go for a run. Oh, look, I've just gone for a run because I'm not hungover, so I go up a bit. And it's the opposite of that awful spiral that we're often on when we are drinking. And then, but you've got to kind of start somewhere. And like you say, you've got to put something practical in, I think. And I know it might not have to be complicated, but it is a bit of it's leg work, isn't it? And it's muscle building.
And it's about noticing the small things. You are never going to lose 2 stone in 2 weeks, but you might sleep better in those 2 weeks. You might have had less arguments at breakfast in those 2 weeks. You might have got a little bit more work done in those 2 weeks. They are all valuable. They are worth something. They are things that didn't happen in the 2 weeks before that.
Yeah. And I think in the early days, your brain, what's tricky is your brain is still wired, it's still going to alcohol. So it's got to be fairly conscious and putting in a new pattern at that point.
I tested my blood sugar levels before I gave up drinking, and I was almost in the pre-diabetes range. And within a month of giving up drinking, I was measuring my blood at home. I had come down to a normal range. I mean, that was good enough for me as one of the things that I looked at. If I had really thought about it a bit more, I could have measured a whole suite of things from, my energy levels through to my patience. And I would have seen some really great changes. And my patience is still improving. It is over time.
Yeah, mine too.
And it's nearly 7 years for me. So
congratulations. Yeah.
I've got to run a marathon on my sober date on May the 11th.
What this year?
Yeah.
Wow. Well done. And have you started training?
So I've got a half marathon next weekend, which we're doing, and a Club Soda social afterwards. And then I thought, screw it, let's just do a marathon really quickly. Oh, God. Now it's like cold and snowing and, but whatever. It'll be all right.
Which marathon are you doing?
It's somewhere in Kent. Apparently, I hadn't looked at this. It's got some hills at the end.
Excellent.
I might be walking the last 10 miles, but
it doesn't matter.
Well, I was going to say you're allowed to walk, aren't you? When I heard that, because I was thinking people who do marathons are like literally like Olympians, and then someone told me you could walk, and I went, okay. I'm not going to do it.
I've done 25 miles in a day walking. So I could probably actually 28 miles. I think I did the last bit of the Lee Valley all in one day. I was determined to do it, so it's like 28 miles, so I got lost. So
yeah, my friend and I, we went traveling in Nepal, and we were so sick of kind of like sleeping in rat infested little sort of homes, and we were like, right, we're just going to walk the rest. And we've been whining the whole time and just like whinging, I don't like it, it's too high. We're like, no, we're just going to walk the whole thing. It's supposed to take 2 days. And the guide was just like, okay. And so we got up at 5 a.m. and we just walked. And we basically walked from Stroud to Bristol, like just about 38 miles. We're just like, no. We walked from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. or something. Just like anything for a bath. Yeah, so that's determination for you.
So what about, Club Soda? What's next for Club Soda?
Well, we are seeing where the wind takes us in most cases. So, which has been an interesting journey for us. So we've launched our guide for mindful drinkers, which people can see at clubsodaguide.com. Okay. And basically, we have now got the first ever guide to all the drinks available and where to find them. So you can go on there now and you can find pubs near you that have got a good range of alcohol-free drinks, or restaurants even as well. And you can also see the drinks. And next week, I think, where you can buy those drinks retail, so which supermarkets have got them, will be on there as well. And
amazing.
We're spending all of this year asking the public to help us crowdsource that guide. There's already 5,000 venues on there, but we're asking people to tell us when they find somewhere and to nominate venues. Because for me, mindful drinking is about not just going, right, I've sorted this out for myself and I can manage this. It's about making it better for the people that come along after you. So if you can ask a pub to get an alcohol-free beer, and if you can tell them that you're going to nominate them to a guide if they're really good, and if I can begin to change the way the rest of society works around us, rather than it always having to be about us making change, then that is really exciting for me. So actually next week we're talking at pub events next week about why pubs need to do more, why this is about diversity of social spaces, how this is about keeping our pubs and our restaurants alive in the UK. And we're putting on the first ever alcohol-free drinks tastings at Pub 19.
Yeah, amazing. That's brilliant.
So, for me, this taps into one of my strengths, and this is where we all have to look at our strengths, which is that I never want to be the therapist. I'm not a therapist type because it involves listening far too much. And as you can see, I do a lot of talking. So for me, this is about creating the environment where we can all do things together to make things better. And the festivals are also about that as well, which is about saying, why don't we all come together in one space? You can try all the drinks and you can see other people and you can talk and hear and learn and get what you need from that, so that you can build your confidence to make the change that you want.
Yeah, I must say, like, my own personal experience, like the club soda aspect has massively helped bridge a gap between me and my family, because my family are big drinkers. My dad loves real ale. He's a proper pub ale man, and they came to the festival to hear me speak, which was really sweet. But Dad, he loved it. He just went round to trying everything, and it was that, for him, there was such a missing thing of just like, what are you going to drink? You need to drink something nice. And he loves that idea of it being special. And, he's a very sort of celebratory drinker. And, whatever, as I always say to people, if it's not harming you and it doesn't make you feel bad, then you crack on. Like, I'm not judging you about alcohol. It just wasn't good for me, and it was great, and he had a great time, him and my mum, when they went round. They love a freebie. They're like, oh, lovely, try that. Did you try that, Hazel? We'll try that.
But in that room we also had 3 of the top beer writers in the country doing tours around all the beers.
Yes, fantastic.
And on the Wednesday before, we did an event with the Guild of Beer Writers about alcohol-free beer, and we've been given some research funding from the Worshipful Company of Brewers around alcohol-free beer. These things would not have even been thought about 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's changed hugely.
So I hope that what Club Soda brings in is a slightly different element into this space, which is that, I believe we can change the discourse around changing drinking, and mindful drinking can mean absolutely anything. It can mean that you're going alcohol free, or it could mean you're moderating, or it could mean that you are driving this evening, but it suddenly becomes a positive word and not a negative word, like total or whatever. And we can begin to change the way that we talk about this, which is that these things are available for everybody. It's not just for those who can't drink, and not being able to drink is somehow a handicap. And talking to pubs and bars about this being just another dietary preference, like the vegan and vegetarian meals they have on their menu, it then clicks, and it becomes a really exciting discussion.
I think it opens up that It opens it up to people who still drink, I think, in a way that old paradigms didn't. It was like, right, if I don't look like that, then there's not a problem, and that every other form of drinking is entirely normal. And actually what this does is it just says, oh, look, there's lots of different options. Let's start to question, let's have to look. And it's not threatening, and it means that it just opens it up, doesn't it, to mainstream, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I see, that filtering down of messages.
Yeah, and it means I can give you the tools. Like I did an event for a big catering event last week, because I'm obsessed by the fact that even in some of the biggest companies like Accenture and Schroders and all of that lot, if you go to a drinks reception with them and you're not drinking wine or beer, you get to self-serve yourself some warm carton orange juice from the end of the table.
Disgusting.
And all of us can go into our workplace and say, right, when we're having events now, could we make sure there's something good for people who aren't drinking? Because there's lots of people who drive home at the end of their commute. There's lots of people who might be pregnant in the room but don't want to talk about it. So we can all do things. And if we can give you the tools to do that in a way that isn't, I don't drink, so nobody else should drink, and you should take away all the drink, isn't that, but is did you know you've got a diverse workforce? How about we do something about that? Then again, that gives us all practical things we can do and to make things better for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say my dad's a cancer survivor, so, for him it's like he can't drink like he used to drink, and he shouldn't. So, there's that whole aspect of
like
people
make
like
room
that.
for sober, whatever that looks like, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've just about come to the end, and thank you so much, Laura. It's really fantastic talking to you. It's just, I'm so impressed as well about the activism and how, I really do think you're changing the landscape and the conversation culturally, But more importantly is we're all doing it together, because when I go and speak to people, I don't say, I've got 30,000 people changing their drinking. I say, I've got 30,000 customers who all want something better in the pub. And that speaks to the industry.
And then people go, and nobody, if you think about our hospitality sector, we don't have a very engaged customer base. We're not actually very demanding. They don't talk to their customers very often, apart from when they're at the bar ordering a drink. So we talk about the fact that we bring a dimension that they haven't had a voice into this space that hasn't been there before.
Yeah, and that will appeal to them because that's an untapped market. So it's speaking their language.
And also that, pubs always were an integral part of British culture, and they were the heart of the community. And, I grew up in the West Country, and so many pubs have shut down or that they're really struggling, and live music and comedy nights. I mean, Stroud is very good for that kind of thing, but that is an integral part of British life, but it doesn't just have to be about getting shit-faced, No, it's about being with
together.
People and everyone being there.
And I still spend as much money, but I'm more likely to have a few drinks and always have dessert now, you see. Yeah. So, are you telling me my money's not good enough? I have a pint of pork scratchings, please.
So we always end up with a tip of the day and a reason to love sober. So would you be able to firstly give us your tip of the day?
Oh, my tip of the day is to have a little think about your values, because you talked about it at the beginning, and actually you said it made you feel very contemplative, and actually I nearly cried when I was talking about that bit. But so I think you should go back and think about the values, the things that are really important to you, the things that you thought you would be doing in the world at this point in your life but maybe you're not doing, the things that made you excited when you were in your early 20s, and write them all down and say, how can being sober bring me back to those things? How can I feel like that person again before alcohol really messed with my brain and changed the way that I think? And write those down and see how you can connect to those, because we often, we always focus on the physical things that we can see and the things that we're told by society. that we must be thin, we must be running, we must be doing that. But actually, that's not the most important thing. It's about the things that are fundamental to you. Do you care about the environment? Do you care about how you interact with other people? Does family matter to you? Is your career important? Is what you're doing in your job important? And how can being sober get you to reconnect back with those things? Because for me, that was one of the most important things for me, that light bulb moment when I realised I was that person again, and it was hidden behind a fog and a mist for a load of years. So write those down and think about how you want to be connected back with those.
Oh, that's touched my heart. Really made me. We're both wiping away a tear, aren't we? I can see you, Mandy. I was like, oh my God. That's made me feel emotional.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And what was a tip and a reason to love sober, you said?
Love sober today.
I want to tell you, because I know I'm further along in the journey than all of you, and I can't actually believe it's nearly 7 years. It keeps on giving. Don't expect everything to be to happen to you in the first year. And say, well, that's it. I've done sober now, and I won't ever feel the effects of it. Things don't always happen at once. I always joked that I wasn't going to be the woman who in my early 40s took up running. And so for ages, I resisted that at the start of Club Soda because everyone else was doing it. But ultimately, I have taken up running. And it doesn't matter that I didn't do it in years 1, 2, and 3 after giving up drinking. I'm now doing it in year 6. And that's okay. And I would not be doing it in year 6 if I hadn't stopped drinking in year 1 and I hadn't done that really weird swimming challenge against one of our members, Jill, 2 years ago, where I swam 44 kilometres in 1 month to beat her. This run started with all of those things. That it doesn't all happen at once. It doesn't all have to be some identikit progression. They all have come because I've got 7 years of sobriety behind me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much,
yeah,
Laura. It's been amazing to talk to you.
No problem.
So if you're immediately concerned about your drinking, you maybe consider going to see your GP. Alcohol Concern website has lots of information about agencies of local support. I think it's very clear today, there is support out there. So there are these, online communities and meetups with Club Soda that you might find exactly the kind of support you need. Soberista, She Recovers, just to mention a few, but do, reach out and get support. And we'll see you next week for more chat. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.